two guests with us who do graphic design and animation. And so I'm really excited because I don't know a lot about these career fields, so I'm going to learn right along with you all. So first here in person, we have Andrew Ciskanik, who graduated in 2012. He discovered an early interest in art and design while taking animation and graphic design classes during his high school years. Through personal projects and self-directed education, he built up enough experience to land an internship with the Christendom marketing department, where he assisted in layout design for print and digital publications. I'd love to hear more about that, what
Sure.
exactly you worked on. After graduating from Christendom, he began his career in marketing and web design, eventually finding a focus in government contracting, which, by the way, is a word that nobody actually understands what that means, so
Sure,
please
yeah.
inform us. He is currently an associate experience designer at Booz Allen Hamilton in Northern Virginia. He supports projects in art direction, video and animation production, user experience design, user interface design, and brand identity and engagement. So, welcome to Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And on screen here we have Libby Peterson, who graduated in 2018. She is joining us from California, so it's a little bit earlier in the day for her there. She graduated from Christendom with a BA in philosophy. After graduation, she actually worked at Walt Disney World, where she discovered that character animation is actually a career. She then attended Anim School, I hope I'm saying that correctly, an online 3D animation school where she was taught by animators at studios like Disney and DreamWorks. In 2022, she accepted an internship at Pixar and animated characters from Toy Story 4 and Turning Red. She then joined Lucasfilm at ILM Immersive. She animated in Marvel's What If, an immersive story for the Apple Vision Pro, and is currently animating on an unannounced film. In her free time, she has been teaching herself video game development and is currently working on a small Souls-like indie game. So, welcome to Libby.
Sorry, it's a bit laggy and it really clears up.
Can you say that again, Libby?
Can you hear me okay,
Yes. We are good.
I can't, okay.
So just so you all know in the room, she can see us because otherwise it's a little awkward for her to just see your all's faces. So she's kind of communicating with us. So if I look at the camera, it's because I'm looking at her, and then you all can see her up here. And of course you can see what she sees down in that corner there. So I think before we actually get into all the questions and everything, Libby has actually prepared a video for us to watch of her animation. So let's hope this works as intended. I apologize in advance for the sound. It may be movie theater-like, as Aaron described earlier.
You guys have quite the assortment of artifacts. Well, I have a new one for you. It's to die for.
Keep an eye on her. I'm going after the stone.
Yours is better than mine. Why you want mine? It's the same. There's nothing. Come on, don't do this.
Please.
Okay. I really don't understand. It's the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You wish to return to the Soul Stone.
You want to go back there? To an endless yellow eternity of nothingness?
No one truly knows how Soul World works. The ancients believed it could be whatever you make of it.
You'll still be alone.
No. He won't.
Would you do us the honor?
We're ready. I'm sorry, Vision, for what I've done.
My love of a broken heart casts a spell, even more powerful than the Scarlet Witch.
pretty awesome. Okay, so Libby, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what we were seeing there and how you got into animation, etc.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I don't know why, but I am getting a major lag, so I just want to make sure as long as the audio is good, then that's fine.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, can you repeat your question one more time?
Sure. So tell us a little bit about what we saw in your demo reel there. And I noticed there were a few spots that said responsible for this type of animation, etc. So give us more insight into what you were doing there and how you got into animation.
Yeah. So, my animation is mainly professional work. I did have some personal tests and some student work on there. So all the Marvel stuff was animated for the Apple Vision Pro in a game engine. And how we animate is we have a 3D digital puppet, and then we pose it out in individual images so that when those images play as a sequence, it gives the illusion of life, that the character's thinking and moving on their own, and not that I'm like meticulously, posing out a finger or like putting the elbow here, stuff like that. So that's basically what an animator does. I don't do any of the lighting. I don't model the characters. I don't, design them in the game. That's not my role. I just make them move. And how I got into animation was realizing. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Because I really wanted to work creatively, but I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. So honestly, when I was at Disney World, I just emailed animators who just worked on Frozen 2, and I said, what should I do to get into animation? And they recommended what I ended up doing, which was going to the online school and focusing really much on the craft and not so much on other disciplines like, lighting or rigging and stuff like that. And yeah, I just did that and found myself in this hybrid of games and film at ILM Immersive. We don't properly make films, but we also don't properly make games, but I like that, so it's interesting. I'm always learning something new.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered the question, sorry.
Sure. And actually, so you said you emailed animators on Frozen 2 to ask them. Okay, so we would call that networking, right? So she networked while she was at Disney World to Disney World or Disneyland? I can't remember. Disney World.
Yeah, Disney World, the one in Florida. Yeah.
So, okay, that's wonderful. All right, so I'm going to switch over to Andrew for a little bit, and I want to hear about how you got into graphic design, and you even had animation listed in some of the work that you do. So tell us about how you ended up where you are.
Sure. I kind of grew up with an interest in illustration and art. My parents were always very encouraging in us exploring hobbies that we were passionate about. So I would say it started as just like a personal interest in drawing, and that further developed from there. I was able to take a number of classes. They kind of encouraged me to go look at a local art school, and this was more of just based on a personal interest. I wanted to take a graphic design course, an animation course. So all of that was brand new to me. I didn't explore art on a digital application. So being able to draw on a computer was a new world for me. And I think it kind of opened up, my mind to the possibilities of using those creative skill sets, traditional drawing with pen and paper, and translating that into a digital application. So I think from there I was able to just be introduced to a lot of graphic design concepts. A lot of it is, a mix of print and digital. So graphic design traditionally is layout design for print. So a lot of marketing applications. So printing for collateral for advertising. And so I had a little bit of exposure to the print process and then just the digital process as well. So the animation was a fascination for me, and it kind of sparked my interest. I was able to get a hold of the Adobe programs, which is definitely an industry standard for design. So if anything, just grabbing those programs, finding a student subscription to it is a great way to get access. I think back in the day they had free demos you could use. Okay. And I was able to just explore a lot with that.
Okay. So while we're on that topic, I will take this moment to tell you all, I have actually it's this laptop right here, has the entire Adobe suite that you are able to use anytime you want during kind of normal business hours. Just let me know that you want to borrow it, and you can come to Regina Chaley and hang out in there and utilize the software to practice any things, to learn. I think it's great when you have a project to work on as you're learning the software. Remember, you all have access to LinkedIn Learning, and on LinkedIn Learning, there are numerous Adobe courses that you can take to learn all the different pieces of software. So that is available to you. The student subscription to it, I think, is $20 a month, and you can do that for 1 year, I believe. I think there's some sort of stipulations on it. So if you want to download that and pay for that on your own, that's also a great thing if you want to use it. So thank you for introducing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally forgot about that. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did here at Christendom? So you got into the marketing office here. What kind of things did you work on? How did that end up?
So I think just coming from a family business world, so my family ran a small Catholic homeschooling book selling business, which is definitely a long descriptor, but we would sell homeschooling books. But again, just coming from that family-run business standpoint, everyone could kind of contribute their own skill sets, their own strengths, and things that they wanted to learn. So for me, it was the design components, so learning the marketing pieces. I was able to work at that job over the summer, so going home, working at family business. When I came back to school, it took me to my junior year to really explore what existed at Christendom College. So I was able to connect with Paul Jalsovac in the advancement office, and then Niall O'Donnell as well. We were able to work together on he was able to mentor me on a lot of the design process, web design, print design. And that was hugely beneficial. But it was just those connections that existed around me asking for the opportunity. So I think just reaching out to Paul was initially how I got connected. But they have the development office. They have a lot of jobs where you're reaching out to donors. You're trying to connect with the fundraising side of things.
Certainly.
Beyond that, we found applications for the design component to actually market to those donors as well. And so you'd mentioned the publication work I had done at the office, and that was a donor honor roll publication that we put together. So it was actually the layout design for a publication.
Okay,
and it was
very
cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, okay. So that makes me think of so if students are interested in any kind of graphic design, photography, video, animation, what do both of you suggest as far as a portfolio? How should they put together a portfolio? What should that look like? What should they use to do that? This was not a question we prepared for, I'm sorry. Sure. Either one of you can go.
Yeah, Libby, if you have anything, go ahead.
I'll say for animation, you want to focus on having solid body mechanics, which that's an animation term. It basically means that your animation is anatomically and physically correct. Because as an animator, we're this hybrid between creating motion, and the motion can be stylized, cartoony, can be Looney Tunes, or it can be really more grounded, it depends on the art direction. But it has to feel real according to the rules of the art style. And you also need to be an actor, which I didn't touch on at all at the beginning, so sorry about that. But yeah, you have to understand what a character's thinking, how to convey that through their poses, how to know what's appropriate acting choices for the character at that moment. So your demo reel really need to have I suggest anyway, a variety of different art styles. So more cartoony physicality, more realistic Disney style physicality, and also different styles of acting. So my student demo reel, I had some really zany, I showed it was like the Italian lizard, that's very pushed animation. I also did one that was a student who was very upset. She just went through a breakup, and it was way more realistic style of animation, and the acting was way more somber, I guess you could say. So having a wide variety of styles and in your content is really important, and you want to focus on animation. It's okay if it doesn't look pretty and all that stuff, because we just want to see if you can animate. That's what at least the major studios, if you want to go for a more generalist role at the studio, it's okay to have some rigging, some lighting, other things like that. But if you want to work for a major studio like Pixar, Disney, Lucasfilm, they only hire people if you specialize in a role. They don't really hire generalists. So I would just focus on animation and diversify your portfolio.
Okay, so you're saying kind of have a niche that you focus on instead of saying, well, I can do every aspect of it.
Yeah, for the big studios anyway. And that also goes for games too, like Blizzard, EA, they'll hire animators for cleaning up all the mocap and stuff and animating the cinematics. They don't hire generalists to, do animation here and do, coding here. They hire coders for the code and animators for the animation. So.
Okay, that's super helpful to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right. I would say from a graphic design standpoint, like to resonate what Libby said about showing solid work, I think the subject matter, when you're starting off, no one's hired you to do any work yet. I think, Kristen, you had touched on this, like taking your own personal projects and putting together some solid work as a portfolio. I think as a solid starting point is you're showing your capability, you're showing that you have design knowledge, you have design sense, you have a good eye for design, but then you also know what the solution you're solving for is. So being presented with a challenge that you're solving through design, I think goes beyond just showing a solid picture. If you're into illustration, is it just a pretty picture or does it actually have a practical use case? And I think that's something that you can be empowered to come up with yourself. You can definitely get creative with presenting your work in a way that shows why you chose these design directions. You're sharing your design rationale and your way of thinking. So you're not just showing clean work, you're showing why you chose one way versus another and how you solved a specific problem. I think that's definitely very beneficial for a first portfolio.
Okay. And if we have time, I'd love for you all to share what avenue to create that portfolio. But
Sure.
What I actually love to do is have you share with them if they're interested in one of these types of careers, where do they start? What is kind of the starting point for them being students here at Christendom?
Yeah, I think you can start where you are. Back from my own experience at Christendom, it took me until my junior year to really kind of open my eyes to the opportunities around me. I would say the first couple projects I got involved with was designing a t-shirt for East versus West games, designing a program for Mystery Dinner Theater, posters, and then in a more official capacity, jumping into the marketing department, working with Niall on real website projects. But yeah, I think there's so many opportunities around you, just even to collaborate with friends who have something going on. If friends of a band, make a poster for them, make a logo for your friend's business idea. So I think there's plenty of opportunities around you just to open your eyes to that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Libby, what would you say? Where do they kind of
start?
start?
Yeah, I was also say I did that too. I was on SAC and I helped create a lot of posters for that, and I also just volunteered to create posters for. I think I helped out with some presidential runs. I think it was a class below me. I helped her out with some things. So Christendom does offer a lot of opportunities. For me, it was a lot of just piquing my interest and seeing what I'm interested in. Because I originally thought maybe I wanted to go to graphic design, and I didn't include this, but I actually did attend university for 1 year doing graphic design, but I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do, so I switched to animation. But yeah, Christendom has a lot of opportunities to just volunteer, search them out, and I also really recommend, there's so much on the internet. I'm teaching myself how to code from YouTube videos and ChatGPT, so I can do it, you can do it too. So definitely YouTube tutorials, there's Blender, free animation software, there's a lot of resources online you can use as well. So if you mix online and all the opportunities available at Christendom, you can really start to figure out what you may be interested in. So
that's awesome. We're kind of opposites, Libby. I feel like I tried a lot of the same things you did as well, and I ended up going the opposite direction. I think it is cool that you can get out there and try all these different things. There's a lot of resources available online, and sometimes you can be a little bit lost in the endless decisions you have. And I think just starting a little bit, just picking something and trying it out and giving it a good try. Like Libby was mentioning, a specific program, maybe it's game design, maybe it's animation or graphic design. And I think just jumping right into something is a great place to start.
Okay, so Libby, you mentioned Blender. What is that?
Yeah, so Blender is an open source animation modeling and rigging software. It is a bit different than the industry standard, which is Autodesk Maya. Autodesk Maya is kind of expensive. I think the cheapest plan is like $300 a year, which normally it's like $2,000. So that's pretty good how they offer that. But Blender is free to download, and if you're interested in 3D animation, I would recommend Blender. You can download some rigs and just try doing simple walk cycles of bouncing balls, follow some YouTube tutorials, just to see if you like 3D animation, because it is pretty technical. You may like the idea of animation, but then once you actually dive into it, you may be like, oh, I don't like this at all. And there also are other careers in animation. There's 2D animation, there's stop motion animation. So if you like animation, but maybe you don't like the computer part of it, there are different forms of it, but you won't know until you try. So yeah, Blender is free to download. If you're interested, just check that out. I have it. I don't use it a ton, but I actually use more Unreal Engine for animating because you can actually animate in the game engine, but that is a whole beast. It's not very beginner friendly.
Okay. So
to the point on Blender, I know there's a lot of free stuff out there too, and I think one individual I'd followed for a while, Andrew Price, is a great resource for Blender. He explores a lot of tools within the program and is very great with the open tutorials and free resources he has available.
Okay.
It's a cool program.
Okay.
Definitely
Awesome.
recommend it.
What do you all think of Canva?
Can't say I've ever used it personally.
Okay. What about you, Libby? Have you used Canva?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay.
Isn't that's like a logo designer thing, right? Or
Yeah, it's got a ton of
It's like a
different.
social media use case, right?
I think
Yeah,
you
I
can
think
use
it's-
it for everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
posters, ebooks, print books, pretty much anything. It is kind of the starting point.
I'm basic. I just use Photoshop.
Okay. Well, it's super basic, I think, for students. Like, it's a good starting point. And how many of you all have used Canva? Okay.
I would say, like, yeah, even the Adobe programs are complicated. When you're just starting out, you can be completely lost to what you're even starting with. You can accidentally touch something and screw up your design.
Okay.
And so Maya, like Libby had mentioned, that's also a very complicated piece of software. I never broke through learning that one. But I think once you start understanding the basic fundamentals of how to use a piece of software like that, a lot of the tool tips, a lot of the hotkeys and everything between programs do translate pretty well.
Okay.
So I think, again, just diving into pick one tool, Photoshop or Illustrator, and really spending some time there, I think a lot of those skill sets transfer pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of dive into what your day-to-day work looks like. So Libby, walk us through what a day kind of in your life of work looks like.
Yeah, so for me, at Lucasfilm, we are hybrid, so I work 3 days here, right at this desk, and then I go 2 days into the office, which is right by the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge. We have such an amazing campus. It's so beautiful up Presidio. But anyway, so it varies. Right now I'm actually on a film, which is a very different workflow than when I work on ILM immersive VR projects. So generally how it works is I'll have a shot, and I will just animate my shot, and it goes through a lot of different phases and different reviews. So I always start out think of it like a sketch pass, but I'm not drawing it, I'm posing out a character, and it'll be like kind of rough poses, things like that. And then I show it in rounds, and all the animators submit their work. It's usually in the afternoon, so I'll have rounds. And then I'll get a bunch of notes from my supervisor, I'll implement them, and then show it the next day. So it's pretty basic. You just work on my shots, show them, work on them again, and then it's pretty different at ILM than at ILM Immersive, because at ILM, on the film I'm on right now, my shots are maybe like max 3 seconds. They're really short because there are all these camera cuts and stuff like that. But when in VR, it's completely controlled by the player, right? So it's way different when my shots are like 30 seconds long. As you saw, all the Marvel ones are pretty long, where it's like all the ones on my shot on the show now are like 3 seconds. So there are different challenges to animating for games or film. There's a lot of different considerations you have to make, so I like going back and forth between the two. But yeah, that's kind of what I do, just animate, implement notes, show, go to meetings. It doesn't sound too exciting, but I like what I create.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like, one, you probably are at the computer a lot, right? Sitting at your desk, that kind of thing.
Yes,
Okay.
I have actually, oh my gosh, carpal tunnel is real. Like, I had to get one of these vertical mice because, like, it was getting so bad. Because I'm, like, clicking thousands of times a day to, control the manipulator to, like, rotate the wrist here. Oh, I want the wrist to go here and here. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've destroyed my wrist. So,
no.
take care of your health.
Yes.
Don't let it lag.
Okay.
Definitely agree with that. It's great to take breaks and have outlets beyond your work on the computer. For me, it's, I definitely spend all day on the computer as well. It's, now having kids as well, that shifts things around a lot. I think as far as like honing your craft, especially when you're new in this industry, it's great to have those personal drivers. So if you really want to get better at a certain thing, if you really want to hone your craft, you want to go into the artistic side of things, I think it's important to spend time on that. And so if you need to make time for that, you have to find availability where you can. If you have schoolwork, it means getting up early, staying up late. For me, I do a number of jobs. In addition, sometimes it's helping friends out with some design projects. So I'll typically wake up a little early and handle those. Take a break to get the kids off to school, and then full-time grind at the job, and that's behind the computer all day. So it's great to take breaks.
Home?
I do. Since 2020, I've been from home primarily, but I'll definitely travel into the office. A couple times a month.
Okay.
Or just whatever cadence I can handle. So.
Do you think people who, say our students are graduating in a couple years, and would they be able to go right into remote work and hybrid kind of stuff like you, Libby, or is it more in graphic design and animation, you kind of have to start out in person before you can build up to working remotely?
There's a lot of benefits being in person up front, but there's definitely opportunities to be remote immediately. Libby, what's your experience?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? My internet cut out there, so I didn't get all of it.
That's okay. So I was just saying, if Andrew works remotely, you're working hybrid. If our students are just about to graduate, when they go into these entry-level positions, are they often able to do remote work right away, or is it something that they have to have a few more years of experience before they can do that?
Yeah, I would say most likely a few more years of experience. At least at the Disney policy is they're not allowed to hire remote junior employees. They can only hire remote like the next step up for a senior. But it's exciting. Get to move to a new place, try new foods, different cultures. It's fun. I like San Francisco. I'm from Front Royal, so that's a big change, but I liked it.
I would say you can definitely get lost in the shuffle. Like the Booz Allen company I'm with right now, there's 30,000 to 40,000 people, and you can get lost in the shuffle there a little bit, and I think you can hide behind your screen a little too much. You can definitely take advantage and appreciate the remote work, and I think at the moment I really enjoy it because it reduces the 2 to 3 hour commute that I would have to do every day, and I definitely spend that time more beneficially with my family or just anything around the house. But yeah, I think if you are in that position, you are remote initially, I think it really helps to get your name out there a little more, make yourself present, put yourself on camera more than you're required. Putting your name in the ring a little more and just saying I'm available to do this and just getting in front of people, meeting people and networking, I think is super important. Okay. Since I've gone remote, I still feel like I rely on those in-person connections a lot more than anyone I've met just over, Zoom. So.
Sure. Yeah, it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day. So how do you get projects that you're working on? Who assigns them? Who are your clients? That kind of stuff.
Right now I'm in a lead design role, and so a lot of that is, I'm taking the requirements from a client, so I'm meeting with the client face-to-face, and they're telling us what we need to create. So at the moment, I'm supporting a number of systems, a number of websites. If it's a marketing website, the client might say, we need a new features page where it talks about what's special about our product. And so I will start gathering requirements from a technical side, so I know what the developers need to actually build the page. I will be the one actually doing the layout design, so I'm designing in a tool called Figma, more of the industry standard in the UI design world. But then I'm also collaborating with UX designers who are more people-focused. They're gathering the user requirements. They're understanding who's using the system and what they need. So I've worked with a number of systems that look like they've come from Windows 95, like they're very ancient. And even just the simple UI updates that we'll make brings it into the modern era. And it, just practical understanding. The close button's in the top right corner or the top left corner, and just little functionality things that people take for granted. If it's designed without the user in mind, it can be a very clunky experience and a very broken experience. And so it's great to pair with those people who know what users are looking for and what they need, what their pain points are. And so that's a whole other world of design as well. You can get into design for users specifically, and that's very much research-based role.
Okay. And tell us about the government contracting stuff. Because
Sure.
I hear that, and I never really thought about it with graphic design.
I think government contracting is kind of a catch-all for anything you can do for the government.
Okay.
And for myself, just in design, it's a little bit of a generalist position. Like, I think you are just trying to be as available as possible. You're trying to solve their problems with whatever tools and skill sets at your disposal. So, yeah, you're definitely, putting yourself more in a position of wearing many hats, I think, bringing experiences that maybe you weren't hired for originally, and just being comfortable to have that confidence, I think, to be able to bring your expertise to the client.
Okay.
So.
I was going to ask, you started out as graphic design, and now you're doing user interface stuff. Like, when you started graphic design, was user interface even a thing that was thought about, and how did you kind of transition into getting those skills?
It was definitely a very different approach. I think practically, we were, back in the day, right out of school, I was using Photoshop to design a website. So it was a static screen. It was almost like a picture I was designing. I would pass that to a developer. They would cut up the images into individual images. They would piece it all together with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. This is all like the front-end coding. And so the whole experience was a little disconnected. Nowadays, it's a little more streamlined. You are designing in the same manner. You're using the same principles to design, but I think just the tools now are a lot more cloud-based. They're definitely easier to translate from design to developers. You can give them the tools, and they can almost you can emulate the interactions. You can prototype your design and make it clickable, so you can preview what the experience would look like before it even gets coded. So.
Okay.
Definitely
But that
powerful.
wasn't, so I think oftentimes our students think, when I say, oh, what career do you want to pursue? They feel like they have to have the job title that they're going to have in 20 years, like in their head. But it sounds like in the past 12 years, you've kind of gradually grown and done different things. So there's room for that kind of learning.
Yeah, I think you can pigeonhole yourself or silo yourself into a role, and you just call yourself a graphic designer. I just make pictures look good, and that's all I do. And you can limit yourself in a lot of ways. I think always being open to hearing what the need is and putting your name in there, and just saying like, yeah, I'll give it a try. And I'll not only that, just bringing your own hobbies, your own passions into the mix. For me, it was illustration. So I've had a number of times that I've been able to draw for the government, and it's been awesome.
Okay, very cool. Okay, Libby, let's turn to you. Tell us a little bit about how you got your internship at Pixar. How in the world did you get picked out of everybody? Because I imagine that's a very competitive internship to be going for.
Yeah, it's incredibly competitive. So I don't know. I think it was pure luck. So it was like my savior call. I was up in Canada, stranded because my work visa fell through, and I was super stressed out because my studio job at the Canadian company fell through after I already drove from Front Royal to British Columbia. So that was a stressful day. And then Pixar just called me and offered me the internship, and I had forgotten I had applied. And I was like, sweet, I'll take it. I don't want to have to be up in Vancouver with no job. So I guess they just liked my portfolio. I knew no one at Pixar. I had no teachers at Pixar. Pixar was the one studio I had no connections with. I had connections at Disney and at DreamWorks. I really don't know why I got chosen. I think they just liked my work, and I'm super grateful that I was able to be part of that internship. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had, and Pixar is an amazing company, and they really, really helped me grow as an learned so much. And yeah, Pixar is the reason why I was able to hop over to Lucasfilm really fast afterward, because, you know, the name. So that was helpful, even though it was interesting because I switched, because Pixar's film and I was doing more, I couldn't show any of my work for NDA reasons, but we did kind of classroom style assignments. They would give us like, oh, animate one of the Toy Story characters doing like a walk cycle, or animate like May with this cut dialogue from the movie. So it was really cool, but we didn't actually work on a production. I was doing more the film side though, and then I switched over to essentially games. So it's cool. I like games. I didn't know if I would like it, but like Andrew was saying, like, you know, always be open and be willing to learn and stuff like that. I did that very early on, you know, like right at the beginning. But yeah, I kind of feel like I keep answering in tangents, but
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Libby, I was kind of disappointed. I was hoping for some Pixar spoilers, but this is not going to happen.
I mean, maybe I could if it's not recorded, you know, at the very end, I can pull up my Pixar reel, but...
Okay, we'll chat afterwards. So tell us, Libby, now that you've been in it, so you didn't really start animation until 2020? Does that sound accurate? 2021? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that you've been in it...
2020, yeah, I started right during COVID.
Okay. So now that you've been in it a couple years and you've worked at these big places, what do you wish you had known going into it?
This may be obvious to everyone, but I don't know why I didn't think it through. But certain industries require you to live in certain places, and I don't know why I didn't connect that if you want to work in feature film, you gotta live in California. Okay. Which, I don't know why I didn't connect that. Luckily, I ended up liking California, but you know, growing up in more Front Royal area, that was a big change, you know, moving across the country, very different culture over here. But the work, I really liked the work when I was a student. I loved animation as a craft, which I think is very important. You don't want to, and this is what one of the animators at Disney who I emailed said, is you don't want to get into animation because you want to work for Pixar or for Disney. You want to get into it because you love the craft. And the same thing would be for, you know, like graphic design. You want to make sure you get into it because you love the art form. So I'm glad I learned that early on. But yeah, it's location. I don't know why that didn't click at the beginning. But I like California, so, you know, good. Okay.
So tell us about a time that you've struggled in your job. So it sounds like things have been really awesome, but what are the frustrations? What's hard about it?
There was, well, I'll talk about it because at Pixar, there was one shot I was assigned. It was my first dialogue shot with Miriam, and I learned two really important animator lessons from it. Number one, if you receive feedback, the feedback may not be the correct solution to your artistic problem, but it is pointing at a problem that you need to solve. I did not really understand that until this shot, so I would get a note from one of my mentors at Pixar, and she would say, oh, do this thing to Miriam. So I would, you know, animate the walk doing this. And then when I would get another note from my other mentor, and he would say, don't do the walk, do this. Why don't you try this? You know, and so my animation became this hot mess of just an ugly, unappealing, and not specific performance because I was trying to hit every single note instead of trying to understand what the problem was, which I think Christendom does a really good job because it teaches you critical thinking skills, and I guess, like, you know, philosophy and theology, you really learn how to understand concepts. So it took me a bit in animation because it's an art form, but I feel like Christendom really helped me, like, snap once it clicked, and I was like, and so then I was able to understand how to approach notes better. Understanding that they point to a problem and they may not be the solution. And then there's also another part with that same shot. My acting wasn't on point for Miriam because I was injecting too much of my own personality into it instead of staying true to her characters. So there's a little bit of growth as an actor in that shot as well.
Okay, very interesting. Tell us about yours. What are the struggles and frustrations with you?
I think one of the things maybe I went into the job not wishing I knew back in the day, maybe just having a misconception of the role I was serving. And I think coming into it with a personal interest in art and design and, you know, illustration in particular, to me, I was approaching it as like an artist, and I felt like I had to bring my own motivation to keep, you know, pushing the envelope with art. And so in a lot of ways, I think I neglected the interpersonal skills and just the soft skills, you know, being able to take a project and manage my time well, manage those relationships with other designers. And so I think in my first role, I definitely neglected being able to approach other people and ask for guidance, ask for feedback, and I think in a lot of ways that was a bit of a struggle. You know, one story in particular, with layout design, you know, you're typically designing pages of a book in multiples of 4. So as I'm designing this long document for a pharmaceutical company, so it was pretty stressful, like very detailed. I had to be very intricate with the design. And in any case, I miscounted the number of pages that we needed. I went back to my content writer and told her we actually need 2 more pages. We're actually short. So she went ahead and spent a whole bunch of time writing up this content, and then I finally presented the finished work to a more senior designer, and he was able to see, actually, no, we had enough this whole time. So I not only, you know, tasked somebody else with extra work, you know, due to inexperience, but missed that opportunity to bounce that feedback off somebody. So, you know, looping in a content writer and the senior designer just to get them all on the same page and give my work a review earlier on. Being accepted that, you know, you can fail early and often, and people are always open to giving feedback and giving advice. I think would have saved a lot of heartache there.
Yeah. So how often are you communicating with your colleagues then, you know, at work, with you being remote? Do you have a lot of meetings? Are you running things by each other? How does that work?
Yeah, and with development tasks, we're tracking tickets for development too, so it's a way of managing development and design together. So we're designing in sprints. It's an agile mindset, so we're designing with chunks of the development process being broken up in a couple weeks at a time. So we're all collaborating at the beginning of the week. We're all getting on the same page of what we're focused on. So the designers are splitting up work. Everyone knows what they're handling in their piece of the pie. And then you're checking in throughout the day, throughout the week. It's definitely a lot of meetings. I think once you get automated with the process of documenting feedback, documenting your progress, all of that you can minimize and you can focus on work. A lot of the times it feels like you're meeting and you never have time to actually do the work. But yeah, it's all about managing that requirement. You have to be able to communicate where you are in the process, looping in the right people to provide feedback and input at the right point in time as well. And you learn that over experience too. Obviously there's going to be miscommunication, but that's a big thing to get focused on first.
Okay. So switching gears a little bit, Libby, how does your faith play into the work that you're doing? And that could be, you know, your personal life. How are you bringing what maybe your spiritual formation from Christendom into the work you do, or does it kind of need to be completely separate?
So I don't think you can really keep them separate, at least for me, because my faith is such an important part of who I am that it is shown in everything that I do, which I think is important to have people of faith like in Hollywood, in media, because those values are going to be reflected in your character performances. And you know, we need good art out in our culture. So for me, yeah, it's not like it's overt messaging or anything like that, but with animation, we strive to create authentic and beautiful character performances, you know, the transcendentals, goodness, truth, beauty, you know, we strive to present that. And yeah, I try to be very joyful in the workplace and just kind of, what's that expression? I forget who said it, like, be the only Bible that someone has ever read. I forget, but I think y'all know what I'm talking about. Like, that's what I try to do, because, I mean, I live in a very liberal area, so I think it's very important for me just to show that I live Christian values and that it's part of who I am, and that's just how I live. And if they're interested, you know, maybe they can ask about it, but I'm not going to, you know, overlord it over them or anything like that. But yeah, my faith is a big part of who I am, and I have no problem, like, meshing faith and work life, they just go well together.
Yeah, okay, thanks. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, just as a dad now, especially just living out my vocation for my family, just, living my faith as father, it's a guide to my kids, helping to teach them the work ethic, doing a good job for myself, knowing that I put in my best effort. It's definitely where it translates into. Okay. I think some practical applications too. I definitely admired my first company that it was a family-run company, husband and wife led marketing firm, and they would spend, a small amount, but a monthly dedicated amount of time to, a couple projects throughout the year. They would donate some of their time to their local parish. They would, manage their website. They would, I think at one point we designed for the World Meeting of Families website for the Pope's visit to America. That was pretty cool, just to be able to give back to the Catholic community a little bit. It was cool to use design and contribute that way, be able to donate towards a pro-life cause or something like that.
Okay, that's really neat.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess let me ask you all this. What haven't we talked about that you really wanted to share tonight? Because I do have a couple other questions we could go before asking the audience for questions, but is there anything that you were like, I really want them to know this before I walk out of this room? Libby, do you have something?
Oh yeah, so for me, I would like to just say that as an animator, right, I make the characters come alive. I'm part actor, part artist, bringing the characters through their poses. But there are a lot of other disciplines in animation as an animation studio that you can look into and see if maybe they would align more with your artistic interests. So there's lighting, there are artists who add the lights to the scene, there are the riggers who basically add all the digital bones to the rigs, and then I animate those, so I don't create these skeletons. There's production, so if you're into project management, there's a whole team that helps us keep us on time, on budget, because us artists would just go forever unless production said it's good, send it. So if you're interested in film or games, there are lots of other roles, so definitely look into that and see if there are other artist roles or engineering roles or production roles that could be of interest to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I would say I don't think you need to feel like you have to have this this personal passion for for art or design in particular. You could be bringing your own interests to the field, but I think just knowing that you can take those interests and run with them, I think makes your personal brand unique, and I think you can bring a lot of your own special perspective to whatever job you end up in. I think being open to opportunities is great. And if you have a personal hobby or project that you've worked in the past, don't be afraid to share that. Letting people know that you're interested in whatever it is, you could find that there's a natural fit in your career, and it could expand a field for you.
Okay, yeah. All right, so I'll end on this question. Libby, what are you most proud of in the work that you've done so far?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What are you most proud of in the work that you've done so far?
For me, it's if I ever get a laugh, or in general, the audience reacts to my animation in the way that I've intended. So, for example, in the shot that I had of Hella when she goes and hugs her dog Fenris, I watched some playthroughs of YouTubers going through it, and they're all like, "Aw!" when that moment happened. And I was like, "Yes, that's what I was going for," So that's always so satisfying when I'm able to deliver the emotional impact and it's felt by the audience, because that's what we want as an animator. So that means I successfully did my job. So.
Okay, that's beautiful. And what about you, Andrew? What are you most proud of?
There's probably a couple stories. I think one of my first jobs at Booz Allen was working with a Navy client, and the job was essentially to modernize a lot of HR systems. And so we got to talk through research. We got to talk with sailors. We got to hear from their experiences and their pain points, and see the actual results come about. So sailors getting paid on time, being able to move across the country in a less invasive way. You could actually see the tangible results, and that was really cool to be a part of. I think, again, back to having kids, seeing my own kids strive and take on some of those artistic things that I've tried to teach them or things I haven't even tried to teach them. Like they'll pick it up and they'll just jump into it. My oldest daughter in particular, she really loves drawing, and it's cool to be able to sit down with her and really, geek out over it with her. And so it's cool to be able to pass on a lot of those personal passions and see them run with it as well.
Okay, I love that. Well, thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you all. What questions do you have? We've got somebody back here, right here first. So what we're going to do is, if you don't mind standing up to ask your question, and then I'm going to have to repeat it back to Libby for her to be able to hear. Yep, you're good.
So this is actually directed for Miss Peterson. So I've been online and I've heard a lot of reports from like Sony and Pixar that there's been an issue with crunch culture, I guess, and especially in the gaming industry. Have you had to face any of that in your particular field? And if so, what are some ways that you've been able to overcome the crunch, I guess, is the
Are you saying crunch or
yeah,
grunge?
Crunch culture, I guess, like crunch, yeah.
Okay, crunch. Okay.
Yes.
So Libby, he said that he's heard some things online about Sony and Pixar having trouble with the crunch culture, and he's wondering if you've had to deal with any of that. And if so, how have you handled it?
The crunch culture? Sorry.
From what
Yes,
I hear,
hold
it's basically when you have deadlines that are very urgent, that you don't have enough time to adequately put forth a good enough product unless you do like way overtime, like a lot of overtime for.
Okay. So he's saying if you are, basically you don't have enough time to actually complete a great project because you are on such tight deadlines and you have like a time crunch.
Yeah,
Yes.
Got it. For a minute I heard French, and I was a little confused. I was like, French culture, I didn't get it. No, French time. So, I can't really speak to Pixar because they didn't want us to work overtime as interns, but I can speak at Lucasfilm. So, at Island Immersive, they really don't want us to work overtime. I think I only worked like maybe 3 weeks, and it was maybe 50 hours. Like, it wasn't bad at all. And then the film I'm on now will probably, they said we can take overtime if we want it, which I have had because I've just needed some extra time for my shots, and honestly, I don't mind the pay. We may have to have it later once we get closer to our deadline, but ILM, as far as I can tell, they don't want artists to work overtime, and Lucasfilm does prioritize work-life balance. Just sometimes productions get hectic, and it is what it is, but I don't think it's like common or standard, at least for us. Like, I think I've been with Lucasfilm for 2 years. I've only worked maybe 5 weeks of overtime, and it's only been like 45, 50 hours, something crazy. Like, you hear people working 80 hours. So that hasn't been my experience here at Lucasfilm. I can't speak on the other studios, but at least here, it's pretty good.
I think in a junior role too, you're probably a little bit fearful of being, removed from a position if you're not willing to put in that extra effort. But I think you do, even at a junior position, you have to advocate for yourself. If you make yourself available for all this overtime work, working on weekends, and you show up consistently that way, people will consistently expect that from you. So I think you have to be able to set boundaries for your time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I also think that's, at least at ILM, our production team is amazing. Like, if I tell them I am feeling a little overwhelmed with the deadlines, they look at the budget and then they just update the deadlines. They'll give me an extra 2 days on this one, or an extra, a half day on this one. So that's, again, what Christendom has really taught me was clear communication, good writing, because a lot of the stuff that when I communicate through production, it's like via Slack. And so just communicating very clearly, hey, my workload needs a little adjusting. The production's really happy to work with you to make sure you aren't so overloaded. So, I love our prod team. They're amazing.
Okay, awesome. All right, Thomas?
I know you guys mentioned something about like having met some sailors and things like that. I was wondering, do you guys have any, or in the graphic design world, is there much opportunity for like more travel in that, like overseas and things like that?
Is there an opportunity for travel in your jobs, Andrew?
Absolutely. I think if you are supporting a government client, there are opportunities to travel. If you're supporting a client that is, San Francisco, again, working with the Navy, they're based out of, California, all over the place. But if you work in the Virginia area, there might be opportunities, or however you see it, like sacrifices to go travel to a location you don't want to be in. I wouldn't say that we work internationally. That's not really something that my company would be a part of, but I think you could definitely get into an advertising firm, a design firm that has locations in, Europe or such. Maybe there's opportunities to, travel if that's what you're looking for.
Okay. Libby, do you have an opportunity to travel in your line of work?
So, me, no, because I'm a junior, but my supervisors have. Like, my supervisor Jax on what if he traveled to Singapore to work with our Singapore team. He traveled to London a few times to work with our London team, because especially at ILM and these big studios, like we have vendors and all our other ILM studios spread throughout the globe. So usually the higher ups, like the A&M soups or the directors, they will travel around to the different studios, but just as a junior artist, I don't. But if you wanted that, you could work your way up to supervisor, and then you can go to cool places. But as a junior, I just stay put.
Sure. Okay, thanks. Who's got it? Patsy?
So, my question is, do you get burnout, and how do you deal with burnout? Because I had an older sister, she, really had a passion for art. Then she went to art school, and, she said, the deadlines and being forced to do it kind of gave her, severe burnout, and she doesn't do art as much anymore. Have you experienced that, and, how do you deal with that?
You want to answer that, and then I can
Sure, yeah.
reiterate it to
I would say personally I've dealt with that. I think being, like I had mentioned earlier about having a misconception of you're coming in as an artist versus you're doing this for a job. I think I came into it expecting that my personal interest would carry me through the rough times, but it turns out it's a job. I'm doing this to be paid, and so I think being able to separate that a little bit. Whether it's still spending time on your personal interests and your passions. So if it's getting up early or staying up late to spend time on those, I think it's hugely important to have time to hone your craft and the things that you love to do, where there's no deadlines, there's no pressure. You can create freely as you want to. I think you definitely have to keep that spirit alive. And I've noticed personally when I give that up, when I get busy and I decide I'm not going to spend time on those personal projects, I feel it at work. It becomes very much a job. It becomes very draining.
Okay. Yeah, Libby, she asked about burnout, and have you experienced that? And I think probably particularly in the creative aspect. Are you tired of creating, or does that kind of impact your creativity if you're so burnt out with the work that you're doing?
So I haven't really had that. I've had, I guess, burnout, just from working a sheer number of hours, because Pixar said we weren't allowed to work overtime, but, we would stay in the lab till done, yeah. But creatively, I haven't had that happen. Maybe it's because I'm only, 2 years into my career and a little later, who knows. But for me, no, I do often have projects that I do on the side. Right now I'm learning game development, and I've animated all the characters for my game, and so I find that very creatively fulfilling, and then I treat my job at ILM as a job, and I find creative fulfillment in that, but at the end of the day, I'm delivering on the director's vision. I need to deliver what he wants. I don't get to just animate whatever I want, but I can animate whatever I want in my own game, and so that's very freeing in a way to have those creative projects on the side that I find honestly fuel me rather than get exhausting. But who knows, maybe it'll catch up to me in a few years. We'll see. I'll report back.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and honestly, those personal projects have kind of carried me through my career a lot as well. I've been able to point to those hobby projects a little bit, and sometimes those have moved my career along a little bit more than the stuff I'm doing for my day-to-day. Some of it I can't even show, being government work. It's all just stuff I don't have access to. So important to do your own thing, I think.
Yeah. Sunny, we've got somebody up here. Oh, never mind.
Do you have any tips for staying creative or for your personal inspiration?
Libby, she asked, do you have tips for staying creative and finding personal inspiration?
Yeah, so I think what at least works for me is to find your artistic voice. And so to do that, you do need to try a bunch of different styles and subject matter. So I'll just talk about animation because that's what I do. Like I've animated really cartoony shots, I've animated more grounded physicality shots, I've animated acting performances that were silly and comedic, I've animated ones that were more somber. And figuring out like what your natural taste is as an artist, and then once you figure that out, which for me is lighthearted cartoony comedy, that's what resonates with me most. And then I just do a lot of different educational side projects on the side in my artistic voice that fuel me and kind of, at least for me, how I operate is if I don't get those creative ideas out of me, if I don't animate them, like it boils up in me. Like if you don't work out after 2 weeks and you feel like tense, you know what I mean? Like that same thing, but creatively. So for me, it's actually finding motivation is just doing them and then not feeling like you have to bring everything to perfection. Like it's totally fine if you just do a little sketch pass and you call it a day, or like, you know, you don't have to hold yourself to the same standard for every single creative project. For every creative project has its own merit. So you can do little tests, you can do more detailed type of creative projects, it just depends. And it's always good to focus on a specific skill set that you want to improve as well. So for me right now, I'm trying to learn game animation, since for ILM Immersive, I do more cinematics rather than games. So, you know, I find that very creatively inspiring and fulfilling.
I agree to that point of finding a practical use case for the things you want to create. So yeah, having a problem to solve, I think coming up with something that excites you, I think is super important. And it just kind of keeps, I know for myself, I think just having a purpose or a practical use case for the design I'm creating definitely helps drive me, and I can get excited about it. Maybe I'll try something new, like Libby was saying, explore some different ways to get to, you know, the same result. And then as well, I found for myself as well, just looking at other artists out there, finding a couple, you know, styles that really resonate with you, something you want to learn from. Obviously without getting too in the weeds of just spending all day, you know, scrolling through examples of other artists out there, because that can kind of give you the false sense of you're learning something by just, you know, consuming all this art. And I think you can end up, you know, sacrificing some time where you're actually putting your pen on paper or whatever it is and actually just doing the work. I think that's definitely a little more important.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
And then on that, I think it's really important to do personal tests studying artist work. Like for me, my absolute favorite animator is Glenn Keane. He animated Ariel and Rapunzel, and he's a phenomenal Disney legend, and I love his art style. And so I would just recreate his sketches, or like watch him do a 2D animation and then just frame through it and study why it's working. So don't just consume it. You can also try and essentially copy them, but copy them and try and understand what they're doing. And obviously don't put that in your own portfolio because it might be plagiarism. But and I would do that all the time, like frame through Disney movies, study how they did the poses. Like there's a lot. Honestly, I think a big key to my success was because I studied a lot of professional work, and that helped me accelerate to get into Pixar in 2 years because I was just constantly studying it.
Okay, great.
Cool.
All right, we've got a question over here.
So you mentioned portfolios briefly, but concerning like specifically, what would you recommend for both of your fields to include in a portfolio? And Mr. Ciskanik, you mentioned having a practical use to your pictures and not just having like pretty pictures. And can you clarify what you mean by that?
Sure. As far as, you know, what you need in your portfolio, I think letting it be guided by what your unique style is, letting your voice show through in the design work is important. And I think to the question of what's the practical use case of a design, I think it's just in the presentation of your work, how you show your process, how you show your thought process. So it's almost like you're developing a use case. You're explaining what challenge you were presented with. If you're pulling from a personal project just around you, say you want to design a better Sunday brunch experience at the Commons. The long line for omelets is ridiculous. Let's find a solution. You present that problem up front, and then present maybe a couple different use cases of how you would approach it. You present your research, maybe you talk to a number of students, you talk to the staff about ways you could improve that process. So you're showing your work, you're showing your steps to get to the solution, and then you present, maybe a couple different design options. Maybe it's translated into storyboarding or whatever. If it's a video, if it's an animation, you're showing that artwork that you've created as the solution, and you're putting it in context. I think the context is super important, and it's definitely beneficial for employers to see how you're approaching a problem.
Okay, so you're saying they would outline the problem at the beginning. It's the portfolio shouldn't just be, here's the final image that I created of something, or the final video, etc. It is, here is why I did this, and writing that out.
I think presenting your work as is fine, and in some cases it doesn't need explanation, but I think it does kind of give you an extra layer of context, which can take you a little step above, I think, other people out there. Myself included, like when I'm lazy, I just want to throw the work up online, it's there, and I don't have a write-up for it, but I think it can amplify your work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Libby, he was asking what specifically to be included in a portfolio, and yes, I think that was it. Okay.
Yeah, so for animation, my approach firstly in school, which I guess paid off, was to, again, I've said it a few times, like try different styles and then different acting beats. Because again, we're artists, but also actors, so I took the approach of trying basically different genres, I guess you could say, and then just sent that out, and my artistic voice kind of shined through each one and made it cohesive. However, there is also something to be said that animating in a studio's particular style is a better way to get a job. Like, Disney has a very specific style. It's different from DreamWorks. Now, granted, each of them do have, they'll mix up the style of their films, right, if you've ever watched them. So, but for example, if you're animating and you're applying to a job at Disney, say here's what I'm saying, sorry, I went around the lunch. Cater your demo reel to the studio you're applying to. Because every studio has particular styles and particular needs. So if I'm applying to Disney, I will include more in the Disney style. I wouldn't do any of my super zany, like Looney Tunes style cartoons, cartoony shots, because that's not what Disney does. So I'm showing them, hey, I can do this really cool cartoon style, and they're like, great, you'll do that. That doesn't really help me. It'd be better to put a shot in my demo reel that shows Disney, hey, I already do exactly what you do. And so that's why, when I was a student, I wanted to try all of the different styles and bring them to perfection so that I would have a wide skill set, so that I could go to and animate in any style and adapt, which worked out because at ILM Immersive, we switch our styles a lot. So that's one of the reasons why they hired me, but I got rejected at Disney. So you really have to cater your demo reel to the studio you're applying to. And I think that would, one other thing is, for animation, you don't show, oh, this is my blocking, these are the problem solved, just show the final thing. They just want to see if you can do it or not. They don't want to know how you solved it. If you get an interview, they'll ask you about how you problem solved a shot.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Yeah, to know the difference.
Yeah.
Other questions from the audience? Do we have anybody else? No? How many of you all have midterms coming up? You're like, I need to be studying. Okay, well, I appreciate you all so much. We will kind of wrap up there, and if you two don't mind just hanging out, if you all want to speak to them individually for a few minutes, you can come and do that. We'll figure out how to get you talking to Libby on the computer. But thank you all so much for coming. Please give them a huge round of applause, and thank them for being here.